Hey Jacob, I wanted to leave you some feedback on SA2. So I think that there are some good things in this essay, and I think that yeah, the the thesis statement that you present um, could potentially work. I think that you have it's a little broad in terms of the definition, but I think it could work. And so I think that there are some moments in this essay that are really good. There are some things here and there that I want to talk to you about in terms of improving the draft. So you repeat yourself at the very beginning. These two opening sentences are really saying the same things. So I recommend coming back in here and editing for repetition because you're going to lose your reader right off the bat. So instead of saying the same thing over and over again, what you need to start doing is identifying what specific people you're referring to and what their different positions of education are. That will help you reinforce the idea that education is all about information for the individual. I assume that's what you mean here. But you're just being a little bit too broad here and repeating that broad idea over and over again. Instead, you need to narrow that and identify specific examples for support. Be certain to always avoid second person you in your thesis statement. So you need to identify a clear audience here instead of relying on you. This is kind of challenging to argue that education leads to information because you seem to be arguing that education is simply about skills. Um, and I think that could potentially work, but it might limit you in terms of what you can discuss here. And I think that this is a fair point to end on. But I wonder if it's in the best position here because it's not really clear if you're arguing that education is simply skill based for your future, for a student's future, or if you're trying to argue that education could actually occur anywhere. It could be that you're arguing both, but that needs to be worked out in the thesis statement because the reader can't tell which point is the most important and really what point are you focusing on for the essay. Um, Yeah, I'm going to argue with you here because you are describing a degree. What you're not describing is an education, meaning that I think that this is an idea that you need to develop a little further because you can absolutely receive a degree without receiving an education, right? So people can just go through the motions of high school or go through the motions of college and end up with that degree, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they've received an education. And really, if you're arguing that education is simply skill based, I think that you need to focus on that. What are the skills that people are learning? So if college is helping you get the skills towards your field and subject, to me it sounds like you are indeed getting what you want out of an education if you're arguing with that skill base. So I think that these ideas need to be clarified. Um, Here I really like this idea. I really like the idea of you talking about real world experiences as a form of education, but you're being a little bit too broad. So who specifically are you writing about here? You're referring to people, but that's a little bit too broad. So instead, you need to narrow this. Give us some specific examples of how real world experience can be a form of education, can be a form of that. I really like this idea of you connecting to being being from a small town and how that influenced your ideas in terms of education. Um, but again, I'm having a hard time seeing how all these ideas fully connect. So I like them as individual paragraphs, but in terms of them working towards a larger argument, I'm not quite sure what the argument is yet. Um, in addition, like I said, I think that you're close, but this needs more development. So you need the specific examples that show how what lessons you learned, how those are how that is information that you will then use for your future, because that's what you're arguing in your thesis. I think that you're being a little broad here. Yeah, I think that it's true that this does indeed occur. Um, but there's really no evidence for support here. And what Gatto is talking about in his essay doesn't really connect with what you're talking about here. So I think that these ideas need to be clarified as well. Um, Cost is an issue, but again, it seems like you're kind of drifting from your original argument. Um, you bring Gatto in twice. Um, so like it kind of just feels like he was tossed in here and it's not clear why. Yeah, indeed. You are and I align with you with your arguing that a lot of the skills that people learn in schools could be taught at home. But one of the reasons why we have public schools, at least in the 21st century, is because most parents aren't in a position to teach their children those skills, meaning that they have to go to work and work 40-hour work weeks. So they kind of need school. Yeah, I mean, as I hate to say it, but kind of like that babysitter. Yeah, I think they are learning school skills, excuse me, that could be learned at home, but most parents don't exactly have the time to do that. So I think that there's a lot of good individual ideas here, but what's hard is a clear like working thread that goes all the way through this. So I would re-outline this paper, focusing on perhaps a more narrowed definition here. I think making the argument that education can occur anywhere, not just in the classroom, is the stronger argument. And it's just not clear which one of those you're focusing on for the definition. But I would determine, I would lean more towards the latter and rethink how your argument could reinforce the idea that, yeah, education can occur in a classroom, but it can also occur in other places and be as equally effective. In addition, you need to incorporate the voices of two sources from this unit, and I only see one, John Gatto, and make sure that you are correctly formatting your works cited page. It should be its own page. All right, well, let me know if you have any questions about this. I think that there's enough good stuff here that you could revise this and bring this grade up, so I encourage you to do so. Just let me know if you have any questions.